Most men think the biggest moments of their lives are loud. The breakup text, the promotion call, the day someone walks out, the day someone says, "I love you." But honestly, the moments that change your life the most are usually quiet, invisible almost. A woman looks at you differently for 3 seconds longer than usual, and something inside her shifts. Your friend stops calling as often, and you don't realize he's already decided who you are to him now. Someone watches the way you handle disappointment one single time, and privately changes the future they imagined with you. That's the part nobody tells men. People are constantly making decisions about you in silence, and if you've ever had the feeling that something changed around you without warning, this video is probably going to hit harder than you expect. So before we go further, just subscribe if you want more conversations like this. Not motivation, not fake alpha speeches, just honest psychological truths most people are too uncomfortable to say out loud. Because tonight, I want to talk to the man who feels something shifting in his life, but can't fully explain it yet. You can feel it, can't you? The delayed replies, the strange distance in conversations, the way people smile at you while emotionally stepping backward. And maybe part of you keeps asking, what changed? But the deeper question is, what are people quietly deciding about me when I'm not paying attention? See, here's something I learned after years of listening to people talk about love, disappointment, attraction, resentment, marriage, loneliness. Most life-changing decisions are made emotionally first, and logically later. People feel their way into conclusions about you long before they explain them rationally. A woman may already know she's pulling away before she consciously admits it to herself. A friend may already envy you before he notices the bitterness in his own voice. An employer may already sense you've mentally checked out before your performance changes. Human beings are constantly reading emotional signals underneath behavior, and men miss this all the time because they focus on words. Women especially rarely experience men through isolated moments. They experience patterns, energy, emotional consistency, and I need you to hear this carefully. Sometimes the reason things feel off lately isn't because someone suddenly changed. It's because they finally accepted something they'd been feeling for a long time. That realization hurts people, especially men who are loyal, because loyal men tend to assume that if they're trying hard, people can see it. But emotional reality doesn't work that way. People respond to what they consistently feel around you, not the intentions you never fully communicate. And there's one silent decision that changes everything before any breakup, rejection, betrayal, or emotional withdrawal ever happens. Someone quietly decides, do I feel emotionally safe being close to this man? Not physically safe, emotionally safe. Those are completely different things. A man can be attractive, successful, intelligent, and still emotionally exhausting to be around. And no one tells him, because people usually don't announce these decisions out loud. They just slowly adjust their investment. Less warmth, less effort, less vulnerability, until one day the relationship feels dead and he thinks it happened suddenly. But it didn't. It happened in silence. And the terrifying part? Sometimes you already know. You notice it in tiny moments. The way she no longer looks at you when she laughs. The way conversations became functional instead of alive. The way you started performing confidence instead of actually feeling connected. A lot of men are walking around trying to preserve relationships that emotionally ended months ago. Not because they're stupid, because hope is loud, while emotional truth is quiet. And tonight, I want to show you the 3 silent decisions people make about you that completely alter your future with them. Before they ever say a word. The first decision someone silently makes about you is this. Can this man handle reality? Or does he need comfort more than truth? That question changes everything. And most men don't even realize they're answering it constantly. You answer it when plans fall apart, when you're criticized, when you feel ignored, when life embarrasses you in front of someone you wanted to impress. Especially then. You know, one of the saddest things I've noticed in relationships is how many men confuse emotional control with emotional suppression. Those are not the same thing. A man who suppresses everything looks calm on the surface, but people can feel the pressure leaking out of him anyway. in sarcasm, in withdrawal, in passive anger, in coldness that suddenly appears over tiny things. And women notice this faster than men think. Not because women are magical mind readers, because tension changes the emotional atmosphere of a room. You can feel when someone is fighting themselves internally. Maybe you've experienced this before. You're texting a woman you really like, and at first everything feels easy, natural. Then slowly, you start overthinking every interaction. You become careful instead of present. You reread messages, you monitor response times. You subtly panic when her energy shifts even slightly. And without realizing it, you stop relating to her naturally. Now you're relating to your fear. That changes your entire emotional presence. Suddenly conversations feel heavier, less playful, less grounded. She may not consciously understand why, but she feels herself relaxing less around you. This is the brutal part nobody explains to men clearly. People are drawn toward emotional steadiness because life is already hard enough. Everyone is carrying invisible stress. So when someone meets a man who can stay emotionally connected to reality, even during discomfort, it feels rare, almost calming. But when someone feels that a man collapses internally every time life bruises his ego, they quietly start pulling back emotionally. Not always because they dislike him, sometimes because they no longer trust him to handle difficult truths. And once that trust disappears, intimacy changes, completely. Because emotional intimacy requires honesty, not perfection, honesty. A woman can handle your flaws far more easily than your emotional dishonesty. She can feel when a man is pretending to be unaffected. She can feel when he's performing confidence instead of living it. She can feel when his kindness is secretly approval-seeking. And that's where many good men accidentally lose themselves. They become emotionally strategic instead of emotionally real. Everything becomes an attempt to avoid rejection. But ironically, that fear itself creates distance, because people trust authenticity more than image management. You know what creates emotional safety? Not a man who never struggles, a man whose emotions make sense, a man who can say, "Yeah, that hurt me," without collapsing into self-pity, a man who can feel disappointment without turning cruel, a man who can feel insecure without becoming controlling, a man who doesn't punish people emotionally for being honest with him. That kind of emotional steadiness is deeply attractive because it feels mature, predictable, safe. And I think some men watching this secretly know they've been exhausted lately because they've been trying so hard to appear unaffected. That's a lonely way to live, especially when you grew up believing vulnerability would make people lose respect for you. But emotional numbness doesn't create connection. It creates distance disguised as strength, and eventually, someone important starts making a quiet decision about you. Not because of one dramatic moment, but because of emotional patterns repeated over time. They begin asking themselves, "Can I bring my full reality to this man? Or will I have to emotionally manage him too?" That question determines whether people move closer to you or slowly begin building emotional exits in their mind before you even notice they're leaving. The second silent decision people make about you is more uncomfortable, because this one has less to do with your words and more to do with your relationship with yourself. People quietly decide, does this man actually value himself, or is he desperately trying to convince others to do it for him? And before you reject that question, stay with me for a second, because insecurity in men rarely looks the way people imagine. It's not always nervousness, it's not always shyness. Sometimes it's over-explaining. Sometimes it's constant achievement. Sometimes it's needing to be admired in every room. Sometimes it's becoming whoever people want you to be so they won't leave. That one hurts, doesn't it? Especially if you've spent years being the good guy, the reliable one, the emotionally available one, the one who keeps giving people understanding they never really return. A lot of men slowly build identities around being needed because deep down, they're terrified of being unwanted. So they become useful. Useful at work, useful in relationships, useful in friendships. And at first, people appreciate it. But eventually, something strange happens. The man starts disappearing underneath the performance. His real opinions soften, his boundaries blur. His emotional needs become negotiable, and people can feel it. Not consciously at first, but human beings instinctively notice when someone abandons themselves to maintain connection, especially in dating. You know why some men become emotionally obsessed after getting small amounts of attention from one woman? Because the attention doesn't just feel romantic, it feels like relief. Relief from self-doubt, relief from loneliness, relief from the exhausting question of whether they're enough. So now losing her doesn't just feel sad, it feels psychologically threatening. And the woman senses this pressure long before the man admits it to himself. That's why attraction can quietly fade even when a man is treating someone well. Because emotional dependency changes the atmosphere of connection. The relationship stops feeling mutual. It starts feeling like one person is emotionally surviving through the other. And that creates a strange kind of heaviness. People don't talk about this enough, but attraction often dies under the weight of unspoken emotional responsibility. When someone feels responsible for your identity, your confidence, your emotional stability, they slowly become tired. Not because you're unlovable, because no human being wants to carry another adult's sense of worth. That responsibility becomes suffocating over time. And honestly, a lot of men don't realize how often they abandon themselves in subtle ways. You laugh at jokes that actually bother you. You tolerate disrespect because confrontation scares you. You agree with things you don't believe because you want approval. You act emotionally low maintenance while secretly hoping someone notices your pain without you saying it directly. That last one is incredibly common. Men are often taught to hide emotional needs, then resent people for not magically detecting them. But hidden resentment changes your energy. It makes your kindness feel strained, transactional, quietly wounded. And eventually people start sensing that your generosity comes with invisible emotional invoices attached to it. That's when they emotionally retreat. Not because you cared too much, but because somewhere along the way, you stopped caring about yourself too. And the difficult truth is this: people are deeply affected by how you treat yourself internally. More than your looks, more than your status, more than your rehearsed confidence. Because self-respect creates emotional gravity. Not arrogance, not dominance, gravity. The kind where people feel that losing you would actually mean losing someone valuable. Because you already know your own worth privately. Not performatively, privately. And when a man finally develops that quiet self-respect, something changes in his relationships. He stops chasing emotional certainty from other people, which is exactly when others start seeing him differently. Because for the first time, his presence no longer feels like a request for validation, it feels real. The third silent decision people make about you is the one most men never see coming. Because it doesn't feel personal at first. It feels like timing, or distance, or people just get busy. But underneath it, there's a quiet evaluation happening. Does my future feel better with this man in it, or more complicated? That's it. That's the decision. Not love, not attraction, not even compatibility in the way people usually think about it. Future emotional cost. People are constantly, quietly calculating emotional cost. It's not cold, it's human. Everyone is already tired from life. Work, family pressure, uncertainty, aging, personal regrets they don't talk about. So when someone enters their emotional space, the mind automatically starts asking, does this connection add clarity or emotional noise? And here's where men often misunderstand relationships completely. They think consistency alone builds security, but consistency without emotional direction just becomes routine. And routine without emotional growth slowly turns into stagnation. A woman might stay consistent with a man for a long time, while emotionally already leaving. That's the part that confuses men the most, because nothing obvious happened. No fight, no betrayal, no dramatic ending, just a slow reduction in emotional imagination. She stops picturing a future with you in it, not because she hates you, but because she can't feel emotional expansion anymore. Let me explain what I mean. Every meaningful connection has a sense of movement. Even when life is simple, there's a feeling that things are evolving emotionally between two people. Curiosity stays alive, Respect stays active. The dynamic feels alive, not frozen. But when a man becomes emotionally predictable in a way that feels stagnant, something shifts. Not predictability in a healthy sense, predictability in an emotional sense, where nothing new is ever revealed anymore. Same reactions, same patterns, same emotional range. And slowly, the relationship stops feeling like discovery, it starts feeling like repetition. And repetition kills imagination. Once imagination is gone, emotional attachment weakens. Because people don't just stay connected to what is, they stay connected to what could still become. And this is where the quiet decision forms. She begins to ask herself, often without even realizing it, if nothing changes, will I still want this version of my life 5 years from now? That question is dangerous, because once it enters someone's mind, emotional detachment starts quietly organizing itself. Not dramatically, gradually. Less excitement, less initiative, less emotional vulnerability shared. And the man usually interprets it incorrectly. He thinks he needs to do more, text more, show up more, prove more, fix more. But more effort rarely solves emotional stagnation, because the issue isn't effort, it's emotional direction. People don't leave because you stop trying. They leave emotionally long before that, when they stop feeling growth in your presence. And here's the uncomfortable truth most men avoid. If someone can predict every version of you under stress, happiness, disappointment, and affection, they stop being emotionally stimulated by your presence. Not because you're bad, because you've become fully mapped. No mystery left. No emotional depth being revealed over time. And human connection needs unfolding. Not perfection, unfolding. That's why some men who are objectively good partners still feel like they're slowly being let go of. Because goodness alone doesn't keep emotional curiosity alive. Growth does. Self-awareness does. Emotional evolution does. And when that stops happening, people start quietly closing chapters in their mind while still physically present in your life. Which is often the most confusing form of loss. Because you're still there, but you're no longer being emotionally written into their future. There's something deeply painful about realizing people can slowly leave you emotionally, while still smiling at you every day. I think that's why so many men feel blindsided when relationships end. Not because there were no signs, because the signs were quiet. And men are often taught to ignore quiet emotional truths until they become impossible to avoid. But I want to tell you something carefully here. These 3 silent decisions people make about you, they are not permanent judgments. That's important. Because some men hear conversations like this and immediately collapse inward. They start replaying every relationship, every mistake, every moment someone pulled away, and suddenly they feel defective. That's not what this is. This is awareness. There's a huge difference. The truth is, every human being sends emotional signals constantly. You do, I do, everyone does. And most of those signals are unconscious. That's why growth changes relationships in ways words never can. You've probably experienced this before without fully understanding it. Maybe you met someone again after years apart, and their entire presence felt different. Not louder, not more impressive, just grounded. Like they finally stopped fighting themselves internally. Those people affect others deeply because emotional peace is contagious. And honestly, I think many men are exhausted because they've spent years trying to become attractive before becoming emotionally honest. That creates a fractured life. You smile while disconnected. You perform confidence while secretly anxious. You say, "It is what it is," while carrying grief you never processed. And after a while, even success starts feeling emotionally empty because your inner life and outer life no longer match. People can feel that mismatch, especially people who genuinely care about you. Because connection requires congruence. When your words, emotions, behavior, and identity finally begin aligning, something remarkable happens. You stop needing to control outcomes so desperately. You stop monitoring people for reassurance every 5 minutes. You stop panicking over shifts in attention. You stop interpreting every distance as proof you're unworthy. And ironically, that's usually when relationships become healthier. Because now people are connecting with the real you instead of the version trying to secure emotional survival. You know what quietly changes lives? A man learning how to sit with uncomfortable truth without abandoning himself. That changes friendships, dating, marriage, fatherhood, everything. Because emotionally mature people are rare now, truly rare. People who can hear difficult things without collapsing into defensiveness. People who can stay emotionally open without losing self-respect. People who can love deeply without turning love into dependency. That kind of man creates calm around him, and calm is powerful. Not boring calm, safe calm. The kind where people feel they can finally exhale. I think that's what many men misunderstand about attraction. The deepest attraction usually isn't created through performance. It's created through emotional reality. Someone feels that your presence is honest, steady, alive, not perfect, human. And when people feel that consistently, the silent decisions they make about you begin changing too. They trust you more. They open more. They imagine you in their future more naturally. Not because you forced them to, because your emotional presence stopped feeling heavy to carry. So if you felt lately like something in your life is shifting, maybe this is your moment to stop obsessing over who's pulling away and start asking yourself a harder question instead. What emotional experience do people consistently have around me? Not the image, not the performance, the experience. Because that answer quietly shapes almost every relationship in your life already. And deep down, I think part of you knew that before you even clicked on this video.